Hello, everyone. We're going to let people funnel in here for a second before we actually start casting games. But for now, welcome to Game Analysis Night on Tower Dive TV. I mean, of course, it is Tuesday, and at least where I'm living, it's beautiful weather. Joining me in the Skype call today to analyze some games, we have actually something new we're going to try. So we have more than just one other caster. We're going to have a bit more of a conversation today. First up, we do have Azaraki.
Rar.
As always. A dragon, as always. And then, I don't exactly know, I believe Damon Lasher is here with us.
Yeah.
Yep, that would be it. And, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to give me the last one.
Fancy Zergling.
Fancy Zergling. Well, you are so fancy that StarCraft scene must be just too good for you, huh?
Yeah, just too good. Too Gosu.
Too meta?
Yeah, pretty much.
Too conformist. In order to completely be like the opposite of a conformist StarCraft caster, you need to not cast StarCraft.
Exactly.
Yeah. But did you used to cast StarCraft? I'm kind of curious.
No, I'm a StarCraft bad. I watch. The closest I've ever got to StarCraft in any competitive form is watching Day 9, which I still do on occasion. But still.
I still do that too.
He's
He's just really good.
You don't even need to watch Day 9 for StarCraft. You just watch Day 9 for Day 9.
Exactly.
Yeah. I usually watch him just like Magic or something. I haven't actually seen him do StarCraft in a while.
That was hilarious.
So here's one interesting
It's always
thing I'd like
fun.
to ask. And I've never actually known this before. It's more of a question towards Mike. But
Sure.
now, since it's A-E, does that actually change the pronunciation to Damon?
Yeah.
I thought it was Damon
yes,
Lasher.
it is Damon. I'm pretty
Oh.
sure it's Damon
I didn't know that.
because and it's the same meaning as demon actually. It's just it's the European spelling of it, I believe. And I mean, the name comes from a book, and this was just like back in my childhood. And I've just been using the name until now. I never really bothered changing it now.
And Saki, you have one more introduction to go for because he's gotten his mic working now.
Oh, he's in the chat. So today we have joining our conversation during today's Game Analysis Night. We actually do have Malphus X with us. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm interested to hear this. I really enjoy your casting. So
Oh, thanks, man.
yeah. So we're gonna try game analysis a little bit different, and we're going to have more of a conversation today. Kind of, see if we can't talk about some items, maybe hit on some things in the meta if we see them in the games we end up spectating, as well as doing our regular thing where we talk about the games, that we do have going on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how just get a lot of different takes on something, because a lot of times if you have two casters, then it'll just be like, I think this item is good to build on so-and-so champ, and the other caster will be like, yeah, I agree, and it ends there. But there's so much more depth that you can get into with items, with positionings, with lane matchups, with lane combinations, with comps. There are so many things that you're missing out on if you just have someone talk about it and agree with you. And I think this will really give us more perspective on how certain champs can be played.
Yeah. So without further ado, we should maybe look for a
Further.
game to hop into. If no one has any really higher level players, we could just hop into a one of the spectators. I tend to just find someone with a name of a solo queue or pro player that I like. But I don't know, Malphus, do you have anyone on your friends list or anyone in here?
I mean, I can check and look and see, but I'm not sure if I actually have any of you guys on my friends list. It might be easier for you guys to find someone, and I'll hop in.
Alright, well, let's just hop into this one. It does have Sneaky Castro and Captain Korea. So, a few people that I actually recognize from, like Ninja Ken, and just random solo queue people. So, we're going to hop into this one, because why
And that
not?
looks like it's the first game on the Spectate Live list. Should see on the blue team Ari, Olaf, Twitch, Sejuani, and Blitzcrank. So that is the game we're going to go spectate.
Cool.
I'm not getting there. I'm just gonna have to follow you in.
But yeah, this is like I said earlier. This is just going to be a more open format. So if you have anything to chime into, just feel free to, comment on something. And I'm getting some feedback from someone in Skype, but I think it might be you, Malphus.
Your mic is giving us some feedback there.
Yeah,
some
sorry.
in-game sound.
Yeah, hang on. Alright, I'll mute myself electrically.
Oh, it's okay. Let me just mute the stream sound. We'll listen through Malphus. But we are hopping into this game fairly soon. One thing I like to note, just because I'm a bot carry, I'm a big bot lane buff. I really like the bot lane meta and to see how that evolves. And also I keep that translates to me also keeping up with the jungle, because you gotta really know the jungler's routes to be successful in any lane. I really want to note the summoner spells choices are pretty different. Barriers is a little more common. Things like barrier and cleanse on AD carries now. Ignite not so popular anymore because of that. And we see Captain Korea actually taking Ignite.
I feel like
something I want
to.
Sorry.
I think I need someone to
Something
request
you'll
me so I can spectate the game.
Right.
But yeah, as I was saying, something you want to note is that barrier only lasts for 2 seconds, I believe, so it only blocks the first 2 procs of an ignite. So ignite will still deal about 3/5 of the damage you need it to deal to someone if you want to finish off with the ignite. And it still provides a very useful healing debuff as you are getting into those AD carry fights where both players will usually have some form of lifesteal.
I feel like one of the main reasons that Ezreal in particular has picked up the Ignite rather than Barrier or Cleanse is because of the amount of cooldown reduction he gets from a lot of the items that he's been known to build more recently. Stuff like Blessing of the Elder Lizard as well as Iceborne Gauntlet. He's getting a lot of cooldown reduction, and he's able to get his Arcane Shift up very, very quickly. And this is more geared towards late game, but he has a much easier time positioning himself than most other AD carries do. So he might be able to forego that Barrier or that Cleanse in order to pick up a little bit more killing power in the early game, as well as knock down some of the sustain. Not sure if it's still the right choice. I'm seeing, I think I might personally have wanted to take Barrier against this specific team who's got a lot of burst damage. But what do you guys think about that?
I think I would have taken Cleanse, actually, seeing the Ahri and the Sejuani pick early on. Those are 2 very reliable disables you can usually get onto Ezreal. Sejuani just has to wait for the Arcane Shift before she pops her own ulti and charms him. And Sejuani has a super long range ultimate right now that's really great for team fights.
Alright,
I would
I
actually.
should be... Sorry, I'm just going to check. Am I back? Are you guys not hearing leak sounds?
Yeah, no, we
Yeah,
haven't heard
that's
good
good.
sounds for quite a while.
Okay, cool.
But so as I was saying, I do agree with him that we should Cleanse should have definitely been considered, simply because once the Sejuani dives on him, if he could flash and get away, it's going to be a lot harder once that team fight isn't in full swing to get back on that Ezreal, simply because with that cooldown reduction, the only other person that would be able to bring him back into the fight if he does get away would be that Blitzcrank.
And even then, with cooldown reduction Ezreal, which we can really see that he's going because of the fact that he's building at least towards Red Lizard, so he'll at least have some cooldown reduction. I would have to just say that he's going all the way there, but his Arcane Shift's going to be up if he hits his Qs every 3 to 4 seconds. So.
I really like to point out the fact that we just saw Ahri use some amazing ultimates, and that's really one of the biggest reasons. I think she, I'm not sure about the picking order, but she's definitely going to be far ahead of Xerath in this mid lane matchup, because there are exactly 3 ultimate charges for both of these champions. So Ahri could effectively dodge every single proc of Xerath's ultimate if she times it right, and he's really going to have to play the lane a bit more passively. As we saw, he's already given up 3 deaths. One of them was just now from the jungler gank by Hecarim, and he wasn't able to secure the kill because Ari was just on the move the entire time. So it's a very good matchup for Ari in the mid lane.
It is, and
Yeah, definitely.
we generally see that that's a weakness of champions like Xerath and Cassiopeia, who don't really have the ability to be maneuverable, is that once we have these maneuverable junglers coming in and these other maneuverable casters like Ari, they kind of lack what they need to stay competitive in that lane, simply because when they try to engage, they get disengaged right away, or when they need to run away, they aren't able to do that, especially if their flash is down.
So I kind of wanna toss it to Malphus here real quick and ask him if he notices anything kind of out of the ordinary for this game, or notices
Something
anything
you want to talk
strange.
about?
I just wanted to touch on one caveat. You mentioned Cassiopeia not being a particularly maneuverable champion. That's true in the sense that she doesn't have a hard mobility skill like, say, Ari with her ultimate, which is a super hard escape. But she does get a pretty hefty move speed buff, and she's got a really hard AoE stun CC if people are chasing her, and good slows and stuff like that. So she is, I wouldn't put her at the same level of like, oh please God, please don't gank me, as I would say like a Xerath or something like that.
Or like a Mordekaiser.
Yeah, well, yeah. Just a little caveat there on that. I mean, as far as anything in this game that's particularly interesting, I'm intrigued by the idea of a Zac versus Olaf matchup, as Olaf is really relying on his true damage in order to bully a lane, and Zac both likes to build a whole lot of HP, plus gets a really good amount of health regeneration just from his passive. So that's an interesting lane matchup to me, and I'm doubly interested in the fact that Olaf seems to be fucking crushing it. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Go for it.
Olaf seems to be completely dominating that matchup, as he's up 3 kills and Zac has died 4 times, and he's got a pretty hefty CS lead as well. That's intriguing to me. And then, I mean, there is a support in Italy, but this is a high elo solo queue game, which is just a whole bunch of people screwing around most of the time. So
Yeah.
that's it's not too far out there.
Well, I think
Speaking,
oh, go ahead. I was
speaking of the Zac versus Olaf match, basically both of them actually itemize very similarly, if not the exact same. They both want to prioritize cooldown reduction and max health. However, the issue is that Olaf's trades are much better than Zac's.
One thing I want to say is another reason why Olaf could have been winning the matchup is because he did get earlier cooldown reduction than Zac, so the true damage could have been applied more often than, you know, maybe even Zac could regenerate. So you just gotta beat them down a little faster than they can heal up.
Yeah, you actually see Olaf picking up the Spirit of the Ancient Golem, which is kind of interesting. I haven't seen many top laners do that.
I see every lane picking up all the jungler items
All the
now.
jungle items now.
I think the jungle items are really strong. Like, just when Riot made them all really cheap, you know, they had good base stats. It's not like they were a bad item before, but now that they're very cheap, you can get them really early on.
Yeah, it's just so cost efficient now.
Especially this one for Olaf, since they added the 10% cooldown reduction on it. As I was talking the other night with a couple people, and it's like, what are the 3 stats that Olaf finds most important? And really, when it comes down to it, you realize that it's health, it's cooldown reduction, and it's move speed. It's like, so why doesn't every Olaf buy Shurelya's Reverie? I don't know. And most of them do. Most of them really do. But I mean, similarly, Spirit of the Ancient Golem is in kind of a similar spot. Health and mana regen, flat, a whole stack of flat health, and now cooldown reduction. It definitely makes it a super attractive item on him.
I know in Season 2, I remember a lot of Olafs would always buy... Like, Olaf would always play this, like, semi-support role, like, with TSM and other American teams. Like, you'd see the Olaf get the Reverie, and you'd see him get, I believe it was called Starks back then. So...
Stark Trigger, yeah.
Yeah, so they'd play this, like, pseudo-support role.
Yeah, you just built all the cheap cooldown items, of, you know, like you said, the river. It's just all the items that built out of Kindle Gem.
For cooldown and health.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically an episode of Dragon Ball Z. He just collected like 7 Dragon Balls and then turned them into a bunch of different items.
Yeah.
That's what it was all about.
Oh, Harry
something-
does have blonde hair.
Wow.
Do it, Castro. Wow.
How much? Less than 30 health.
That's
Gotta
insane.
love when an Olaf uses Reckless Swing to take himself down to 15 health. That's like,
Yeah.
that's supreme confidence.
Well, he had to kill that Zac, or that Zac would have easily jumped up and probably killed him.
I don't really think that flash from Twitch was really needed. all the cooldowns have already been popped for Xerath at that time, so he didn't really need that too much. He might be able to have used it against this fight with Ezreal, since Ezreal's very skill shot reliant, and he still has enough damage to take him down.
Nice.
And the jukes.
He's really just juking everywhere now.
So he's so in trouble unless he gets the brush in time. He just got
They noticed it, yeah. Something I want to bring attention to actually is the team composition of Purple Side. It's a little interesting to me because they've got 3 very poke-heavy champions. They've got Nidalee,
It's
Ezreal,
red on the
and
stream.
Xerath.
For those of
It's
you
red on
watching the stream.
Alright. And then they have Hecarim and Zac, which are 2 very heavy, engage-heavy champions. They're usually built for teams that want to heavy engage into team fights. So it's just interesting. They have like 2 frontliners that are usually skipping past the entire enemy team, and then the 3 backliners are just all poke heavy.
And the blue side has a lot of really strong catch in their composition. So Dorne can catch people with her ultimate. Blitzcrank is, an obvious choice. And Ahri is really good at finding people out of position, ulting forward, and getting good charms down.
One thing I want to talk about, I'm sorry, I'm going back to bot lane again, but it's literally just my favorite lane. Twitch. You don't see him as much as some other AD carries. Do you think now that some of the really bigger AD carry players or the bigger AD carries have been nerfed, we're going to see Twitch a little more? Because he is a very strong pick and probably has the highest, if not second highest, late game damage of pretty much any carry. In the right situation.
His biggest... I'm glad you added the right situation part, because his biggest value as a late game teamfighter is the fact that he could potentially land his ultimate procs on every member of the enemy team if they were to line up correctly, which is something that actually a lot of AD carries don't really have as much of as Twitch does, is that big AoE. We see Varus who has it, and he's being played more often as well. Miss Fortune has had that for a while, and she has been played quite a bit, and we're seeing less and less of people like Corki who haven't really got those big AoEs. He has Phosphorus Bomb as well as the smaller bombs, but those are very, very contained AoEs.
It's more poke.
Yeah, it's more so used for poke than anything else.
I mean, as long as MF continues to be the powerhouse that she is right now, she basically shuts Twitch out of competition because she fulfills the role that he does. She's got the heavy early to mid game damage. Her ult has a much wider range. She doesn't have to rely on the enemies being in a line, just within a general area, which is why you often see in Orianna MF comps where they just completely shred teams.
As a counterpoint, we do know the fact that one of the things that makes Twitch so different from any other AD carry is the fact that he also has Ambush, which gives him a cloak for a couple seconds. They heavily nerfed that, and I think what you really need to look out for is whether or not Twitch can use that stealth correctly, and whether or not his team sort of builds for it. If the team itself is for a straight-up 100% burst, then he's not really going to be able to use the stealth as much as he would be. But if their team and their team comp is planned towards fighting the long, drawn-out fights, he can really get some great positioning off with his stealth, and that could potentially help him win a fight. But like I said, you have to sort of have a team that plays towards that strength, and you also have to be pretty good at positioning him with Twitch.
So, I was gonna ask real quick. What do you think of Twitch, Malphus? Because
he's in solo. He's got a weird position because in solo queue, a lot of people don't anticipate his damage, so he can roll a lane. But then after you move out of the laning phase, Twitch is 100% reliant on his team to provide him space and opportunities to deal damage. If he gets those opportunities, he can out DPS just about anybody, whether people are lined up for his ultimate or not. Like, just the amount of damage he gets off of Expunge and the attack speed buff that he gets from Ambush is just so incredibly powerful that he can really, really wreck a team fight in very short order. It's just the short order is all the time he's going to get. People are just going to dive him and kill him. And it's very, very tough to stay alive as Twitch because your primary escape, Ambush, is also one of your most important steroids. So you have to kind of decide which one you want to use it for. So in competitive play, you don't get that Twitch roll the lane because people didn't realize what was going to happen effect. But you do also have teammates who are better able to protect you and provide good positioning in team fights. So it's kind of weird how in each venue he has strengths and weaknesses.
What about old Twitch? Do you? Because I personally I liked his jungle his jungle play. We kind of saw everyone realize. I know it's kind of stupid and it's not really made up, but at the end of season 3, we saw a few teams really try him out in the jungle, and actually he was quite successful from at least certain games I watched. I don't know if anyone played him in really high-level tournaments. Maybe on the Korean level, I saw him maybe once, but Jungle Twitch actually started seeing bans because of how strong of a jungler he was early game.
Going away a little bit from past times and sticking to the current here, one thing I'm pretty disappointed in terms of the red team is their lack of vision, their lack of ward coverage. As Malphus explained to us earlier, the blue team is really a team about catching people out, and obviously they have Ahri, they have Blitzcrank, they have a lot of abilities that can really just catch people out, and the lack of vision is really hurting them right here. The blue team is making a Baron play off of the fact that they caught out Xerath. Xerath did not have enough vision. Although I think that they, after fighting that team fight, going back into Baron was certainly not the best idea. They were already very, very low on health, and this team fight basically turned their distraction, or gave them a distraction and turned their thoughts away from
and then Twitch
fight,
comes in for the cleanup.
But yeah, and then the red team splits up a little bit too much. We saw Zac chasing after a couple of people while Ezreal was alone trying to fight with Twitch. I think both teams could have easily played that a lot better and gotten ahead in that engagement.
Yeah, Red Side was doing a lot better earlier. During the Baron engagement, they were just putting out a lot of poke, and then they managed to catch a few blue members on really low health.
That was a pretty funny roam there by Zac. Ahri just kind of catching him out there, but as far as the vision goes, I'm going to just so you can see what Azaraki's talking about. You can see the different visions on stream now for the different teams.
Yeah, we can see that the red team, they're warding pretty defensively. Honestly, most of their wards are going around the Baron area, which is, they're basically only there because they recently fought a Baron fight, and we see one ward on the entire map away from Baron. So I would really like to see more of that, especially sort of in the mid lane near the river, or maybe even shallowly into the enemy jungle. I'm not into the shallow enemy jungle. I'm not sure how to word that, but what they want to be doing, they want to be starting to take advantages around the map. They want to be starting to take objectives, and in order to do that, you need to push down towers. You need to get the map control, and in order to push down towers, you all need to be, or most of the people on your team need to be sort of focused in that one area, and without wards, it's really, really easy to have the jump on you, or have the jump gotten on you. Some phrases are just hard to word.
English hard. But the thing is though, is once those front row of towers goes down, it's harder and harder to just get a Baron into the enemy jungle as you're just going in there blind. I mean, more oftentimes than not when I'm playing a support or a jungler and I'm trying to make up for my team's warding, and I try to go and put a ward like near their blue or near their red, it's a really difficult decision for me because I know that there's a good chance that I'm going to get ganked because they have the opportunity to come ward up my jungle and know that I'm going into their jungle. So it's more of I feel like it's more of a decision that we need to ward defensively and try to turtle up and maintain our own jungle, then try to advance at this point and wait for the blue team to mess up.
One item I just noticed come on the board fairly recently that I'd like to have a conversation about, because I don't think in our last few tournaments or anything, or at least that I've casted, we haven't really been mentioning it, and it hasn't been talked about, but it was really popular at the beginning of Season 3. We saw Ahri get a Deathfire Grasp. Now, I don't really see that.
It's a more late Season 2 item rather than early Season 3.
I thought Season 3 they really buffed it along with you know, and it really became this like big item, and then they quickly kind of took some cooldown reduction off it, and I think they took one other thing off it, but I'm not quite sure. I know they did a giant rework. They did a giant rework, and they made it just a. It looks like they made it a nuke again. I don't know. I thought didn't it used to just increase the damage dealt?
No, it did a certain amount of flat damage. Yeah, it did a certain amount of damage, and then another bonus amount based on how much ability power you had. Right now, it just does the flat 15%. Yeah. Right now, it just does the 15% maximum health, and then it increases the damage you take by 20%.
Yeah, it was popular late Season 2. When Season 3 came around, they reworked the item to get rid of the fact that it gave 30% of the target's maximum health in that magic damage, which is
No,
really,
it's
really substantial.
15% now.
No, I'm saying it used to be 30%.
Yeah, no, I was
for
just saying
theirs.
now it's 15.
And now it is 15%. They really heavily nerfed it since Season 3, and there was a point in Season 2 where Ahri was extremely strong, and pretty much every Ahri you saw built Deathfire's Grasp because it just really, really helped with her 100 to 0 potential, as well as the fact that her kit really allows her to get in close to a fight. Not only does she have the gap closer to get there, she also has the gap closer to get away once she does the burst. So you can really get in range to make use of the Deathfire Grasp without being too far in danger.
Right, you saw it on a lot of all-in champions, and you still see it on some of them. We have it on Ahri right now. You see it on Veigar. People who still play Mordekaiser, I don't know where they are. But, I mean, to compensate a little for how much they've taken away from DFG, they made a build out of a needlessly large rod, which, you know, gives you the 120 ability power for a slot, which is really nice late game.
Yeah,
it does
basically.
give a substantial amount of ability power.
Yeah, like in the old days with that item, it's just it's one of those things that they want it to be in the game. They like what it offers. They basically the idea is or at least initially it was your tank killer. It was for late game for mages that were having a really hard time taking down targets with 5,000 HP. So in its initial heyday, it had a really strong AP scaling for how much of your max health it could take down, and you were starting to see stuff where like champions like Veigar were taking 60% of opponents' max health with just the DFG, or 60% of their current health. That it was just like, well, what the hell? If they open up on a full tank like this, they can actually burst down a tank with like half a round of spells. So it's kind of the thing where they've always wanted it to maintain that image of the tank killer for mages, but they've really had to be careful about how they go about it so that it isn't just completely annihilating squishy champions in the mid game.
Right, because, you know, the issue with any item that deals percentage-based health is that while it's effective against tanks, it's also very effective against everyone else. It's just that it's particularly more in burning tanks down quicker, but you're still killing squishies just as fast, not faster.
Yeah, we see
You basically
sort
have
of the same
this,
thing with
sorry.
the Andrews as well.
Yeah.
Although that scales off current health, I believe. Yeah, current health on the Andrews. So you don't really see it as much of a complete sort of finisher or anything like that. It's obviously more towards poking and starting a fight rather than the ending of a fight, but it still does that percentage of health damage, which is really effective against tanks. But even if the entire enemy team isn't all that tanky, we still see a lot of mages build towards the Andries, mainly because it not only are the base stats good, but that 3%, 2%, something like that. The percentage of current health is still pretty substantial, even against lower health targets.
Yeah, that's just a bit of a cherry on the top. Like, in particular, it just offers a lot of valuable early game stats to AP carries that you can't find in any other items. It adds some health to survive any initial bursts that you're facing from the enemy AP carry. It gives you spell pen, and it gives you a bit of ability power as well.
No, I personally think that Ahri could be using a Rylai's right about now. It gives her a slow on almost all of her abilities. Obviously, Charm already puts in place its own slow, but she's got a lot of AoE. Basically, every part of her kit except for Charm has the potential to be AoE. And not only that, but it also gives her a little bit more tankiness, which, as we know, Ahri does sort of like to be a little closer to the fight since she has her ultimate procs, as well as Foxfire being more of a close-range AoE. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that especially after her cap, she's definitely going to be probably building towards the Rise. It gives her a huge boost to her max health pool, which lets her survive a lot of the bursts from the front lines that are going to be jumping in on her, namely Hecarim and Zac, both of which who have disables on their jumps when they get in there.
So, while you guys have been talking, I have actually been looking up the history of Deathfire's Grasp and all the changes they've made to it. Yeah, that's what I've been doing the whole time. And, it's undergone a lot of changes. Like judging by what we've been talking about, the item just doesn't have a defined place with any AP champion with mana. It used to have MP5 actually attached to it, and then it's gone. Ability power increase. Its most recent change was that they reduced the cost and they reduced it down to 10% cooldown reduction again, which actually at one point it had high cooldown reduction, then none, then 15%. Like, I don't know. It's an item that, judging just by looking at the patch history, just has been jumbled around a lot.
Well, that's because it's always been a win more item in particular, so they have to be very careful about those items because snowballing has always been an issue in this game.
Rip Leviathan.
Yep. Rip Leviathan.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can go on to actually more serious items now that are actually pertinent to the game and a little different because we've been on DFG for quite a while.
I do want to mention the fact that Twitch has 2 Bloodthirsters.
Nothing but messing around or hyper sustain.
Probably more towards
Yeah.
the hyper.
Yeah.
Just like looking at the top lane right there. I think Zach just basically gave up. It's not. He had the poison counters on him, couldn't escape from the auto attacks in time. I guess they just give up there. But personally, I think I actually would have rather seen something along the lines of the Last Whisper. But at the same time, I don't really see too much armor on the side of the red team.
No,
Which-
not very much at all.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as Malphus said, and it's I think it's pretty apparent to anyone who watches most high yellow solo queue streamers or any of the pro players, even when they play solo queue, they kind of just mess around. I mean, they play to win, and they don't troll in the same way as like, oh, they're just gonna leave or feed, but they kind of just have fun with the game. You know, they have a little more fun.
Elo Heaven.
Yeah, you have fun in solo queue. So, another item that we see a decent amount now, just because it's a really nice, it's fairly cost efficient, and you know, aside from the damage, it does give some decent stats for a lot of top laners and junglers. We do have Sunfire Cape. I don't know if we've touched on that yet, but I'd like to hear everyone's opinion on Sunfire Cape, because there are a plethora of armor items now. As opposed to Magic Resist, you don't have as much choice. You know, with what you buy, there is always the Banshee's Veil, which it kind of fallen out of popularity. It's not very cost efficient, and it doesn't give the best stats. I mean, it has the nice shield attached to it, but oh, now you can see Twitch is definitely troll. But what do you guys think about it with kind of the plethora of armor items you have a selection from now?
Throw it to someone
basi-
that's specific first, so everyone doesn't start talking.
All right. How about we'll go to Malphus first. We'll go to the wise one. See what he thinks.
For me, Sunfire Cape is good because it can provide damage threats to tanks that don't otherwise have it, or it increases damage threats on ones that already do. So if you put a Sunfire Cape on Shen, then all of a sudden that taunt becomes a lot more threatening than just the damage on the taunt and the key strike and the Vorpal Blade that's going to come after it. So especially for tanks that have good mobility or people that generally like to stick around in fights, people like Singed or Mumu, who their threat level increases the longer they're able to keep themselves in the fight and stick on top of targets, then the better Sunfire Cape is. So it's also a very straightforward build path into 2 very desirable stats for people that want to stay alive, just health and armor. You have the best single health item, the best single armor item. You put the 2 together, and it turns into this health armor item that increases your actual team fight threat throughout the entirety of the fight.
So good on Zach and Sejuani too, because like you were saying, those are people who really want to just stick in there.
And Blitz, and I mean anybody.
Yeah.
A weird point that you actually brought up about that is that you have the single greatest tier 1 sort of health item as well as armor item building into Sunfires. Why don't we see something like that for Magic Resist? Why don't we see something building out of a Negatron Cloak as well as a Giant Spell?
That's because I think, well, this is just me spitballing it like right off the bat after that question. I think it's because raw HP is generally considered a counter to AP anyway, because of the fact that magic damage is built or is dealt over abilities that have long cooldowns, whereas physical damage is dealt every single time you can auto attack, which is up to 2.5 times a second. There's not a single ability in the game that you can apply that rapidly. So if you have a whole bunch of raw flat HP, it tends to eat up other people's important cooldowns and basically makes them useless for a while. So raw HP plus magic resist would be just a little bit too much, I think.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
I was just going to say, I agree with that completely. It's just, when you have 3,000 HP, it's a lot more viable for you just to build straight up health and other stats, because you'll be able to soak that 500 point damage ability from the ADC or another character.
I was actually gonna quickly comment on because actually realizing what I said earlier, along with Malphus and Azaraki's question, maybe the reason that doesn't happen is because health is a big damage sink, and just to avoid the burst damage, which is what most mages are. They're trying to burst you down. They're trying to get you down really fast, and health is good against that. If they did make this health magic resist item, like maybe the reason there aren't many big magic resist items anymore is because right now mages are already in a pretty bad spot in the meta. Like they're replaceable on most teams, as you've seen, unless you're playing someone like Ryze or a really late game heavy hitter. Like you see some teams just run someone like a Jace. Lee Sin was popular at the very beginning of season 3. You see right now you see Jace. You can run an AD carry mid. Like there's so many other options. So I think mages are already in a weak place.
Yeah, as it is, as soon as a bulwark is built, basically a mage's place on the team is mostly CC and a bit of damage on the tank, because mostly tanks build armor, which makes it very difficult for AD carries to burn them down.
Well, that was an interesting first game. We did see some funny trolling. You can see Twitch's final item build. Item build, kind of as the 4 Bloodthirsters. Next game, maybe we'll touch a little bit more on, the movements of the teams, or maybe plays a certain team member's made in respective to the jungler's location, or in correspondence with the vision they had during them. So, in the second game, we'll try to touch more on the plays we see happening, and a little bit of the comps, because we really went heavy on the items there, but.
Mm-hmm.
So,
one more touch on the items before we actually get into the next game.
It's not like we don't need to touch on the items. I'm just saying we should touch less.
But, as I want to note, so obviously we've seen this trend. We had... I'm trying to think of the order. I think it was League of Black Cleaver, League of Warmog, League of...
Rune King. Yeah, League of the Rune King.
Alright, so what do you guys think is basically the sort of next League of item, or do you think Riot is going to be
I think it's already
League
of the Elder Lizard at the moment.
No, not necessarily, but League of the Jungler items.
League of Spirit Stone is what I'm thinking. Anything that builds out of Spirit Stone. Because
Yeah.
we see AD carries picking up Elder Lizard buff.
Or
We
at least
see
Ezreal.
top laners picking up Spirit of the Ancient Golem. And sometimes a few like AP champions can also make use of Spirit of the Spectral Wraith. Obviously, I think that item's really good for what's his name, Vladimir.
Yeah.
He can really make use of that pretty well.
That champ that was really good in Season 2, what's his name now? I don't even know.
Basically.
Vladimir was my first main way back in like early Season 2. He was just so he was too good. Like he still is, but he's not as strong. There are answers now. Yeah. But back then, you could literally 1v5 a team if they didn't directly engage you. Or actually, you could kite the team, and then, or you could just have them kite you while still killing them if you had Ghost.
It's really come down to the meta shift and how many nerfs they've hit him with, because just for fundamentally, Vladimir's always been a problematic champion to balance, because he has no resource system and he sustains for free.
Exactly, and he can build health and AP and doesn't have to worry about, like you said, he has a resource, but he doesn't have to worry about the mana, and all he has to do is worry about getting health back, which almost all of his abilities have some way to do that.
Well,
and all of them do when he gets Spell Vamp.
No, yeah, all of them do when he gets Spell Vamp. Only early game he doesn't have free sustain. You really need to watch out or have a regen item like potion something. And now there's really no. There are some items early game that he can use to survive, but they nerfed the potion start, which is pretty much like, okay, Vlad, you can no longer spam your spells, and like you see a lot of top laners now going this like pseudo, just sticking on item builds. This pseudo 9 potion start where they get the rejuve bead, and then 5 potions. They really still want that sustain. You can see them, still pining for it.
Yeah, it's a good starting item build for him. You can start with a Rejuve Bead Award and then max out on potions, or as many as you can still afford, and that gets into the Spirit Stone, which, as you said, Spirit of the Spectral Wraith is really solid for him.
Maybe that's another reason we're seeing a Rejuve Bead.
Beyond that,
that it builds into Spirit Stone. Actually, that's a good point.
Speaking of Rejuve Bead, I've been curious since I missed when they took away Regrowth Pendant. What was the decision they stated behind taking away the Regrowth Pendant?
Probably just not needed.
Yeah,
the only item.
Let's go to Azza, because he's been interrupted like twice.
Sorry.
I think there were just, for the most part, too few paths for each individual item, and they just saw, alright, we have 2 base health regen items that are tier 1. They don't have anything that builds into them. One's just stronger than the other, and that's the same thing we saw with Meki Pendant as well. We had 2 items that did the same thing. One is just a little stronger, one is a little more costly, but they both build into 2 separate sort of branches, which I think they did that for simplifying the game itself a little bit and the item builds, as well as just making it a little more streamlined, making it so that if you, say, buy a Meki Pendant, then you're not forcing yourself into something. Or if you're buying a Fairy Charm, you're not really forcing yourself into something.
Okay.
Well,
that's how I see it. I could be wrong, though.
No, that makes perfect sense. I actually think that's probably exactly why they did it, because one of the things they wanted to do is make more choice in Season 3, and that makes it so, like, say you want an early mana regen item, but normally you'd have to go into Meki Pendant, or normally you'd have to go into the more expensive health regen item. It makes it a lot easier to just be like, okay, well, it's not as big a commitment to get this, 180 gold item, and I can pick up potions and wards, and I'll be safe.
Yeah,
So,
and while we work our way into another game, let's continue the conversation.
So I just want to touch back on the meta
I am
shift.
joining another game now, but you can keep talking about the meta shift. I just would like to let you know.
All right. We've actually moved a lot towards you want to buy like really cost efficient items early games and push for fast games as much as you can, and that really hurts the champions that take a little longer to come into play, such as you see Mordekaiser, Vladimir, all these powerhouse APs back in Season 2, where the games were drawn out a lot more, aren't as powerful in Season 3 anymore, which it's moved to mobility and forcing objectives as fast as you can. We see a lot in the Korean meta, actually. Like, as early as 10 minutes, the team will just group up as 5 and start pushing towers and dragons down.
So I will let Adza get to his point, but that just reminded me of a story. In season 2, Dignitas, there was a game with Dignitas where Skara literally just he went like 1-5 in lane, or 0-5. Ended up like by the end of the game on Mordekaiser, he was killing the whole team. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. One thing that I was going to mention.
Go ahead and get back to your point. Yeah.
Almost forgot it for a second, and I think I'm still trying to grasp it a little bit. We were talking about how games sort of last different lengths now.
And there are more champions to survive.
It forced away some of that sort of safer play. As we see now, CLG EU, now EG had to have changed their playstyle a little bit for LCS Season 3, and we no longer really saw them drawing out games until the 50-minute mark, because that didn't really work as well. And even we're seeing teams like CLG NA, they're no longer dragging games out as long as they used to, and that all the teams in general are basically doing the same thing. And I agree with that in terms of you want to have that cost efficiency, which is once again we go back to Spirit Stone. It's got so much cost efficiency on all the items that builds out of it, that we're just seeing those items come into the meta very, very quickly.
Right, we're like very rarely ever seeing people hit 6-item builds anymore.
Someone's
I most usually
scratching
see.
or
Yeah, someone's. What is that?
playing like the washboard.
Sorry, that's me trying. That's me trying to unscrew my friends list. This mouse moving up and down.
Oh,
Alright.
that's fine. I was
Sorry about
just
that.
I thought it was funny.
Nah, you're trying to start a hillbilly band over there. Someone needs to pick up spoons real quick.
Yeah, does anybody play Gut Bucket?
Bow, 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 bow.
All right. So are we all in this next game?
Yeah.
I'm loading it now.
Well, of course I'm in them. Is everyone else in?
There we go. And we see the bot lane for the blue team actually getting completely dominated by right now by X-Smithy actually. Or, no, not X-Smithy, X-Mini. So not X-Smithy, but different player. At the same time, we see him up against Misfortune Soraka. Soraka's given up 5 kills already. Misfortune's given up 4, only picking up 2 of her own. I think that probably was just from some sort of tower dive that the bottom lane for the red team pulled off, because there are 2 deaths on their side. But what do you guys think happened in this matchup? What made Ezreal get these 7 early game kills?
Well, one thing about Ezreal, and I'm gonna quote. I still can't remember his name. I'll have to like look it up on YouTube. But the guy who did the pro player pick for Ezreal, he said, Ezreal's a really strong champion. You just have to know exactly how much damage you can do. You have to know your limits, and then you can really abuse them. So maybe by having the Janna shield, that extra early AD and that extra shield, he really was just able to kind of go crazy, and he knew his limitations, he knew what he could do, and just Ezreal maybe hit more skill shots and poked MF down and then win in when he had the chance. And maybe MF not hitting so many of her double ups or played a little more passive than she should have. I mean, I personally don't think that Soraka is a great mix with MF. I mean, but that's just me.
Time, I think part of this might actually be in Soraka's fault, because Soraka is really anti-aggression. She has a very, very large armor buff, which she could have used against those sort of all-in things that Ezreal was trying. She could have also silenced him as well, and since Ezreal is one of the more spammy, ability-oriented AD carries, then I think that would have worked pretty well, but somewhere this went wrong, and I think Soraka might have been part of it.
Well, and we can't discount the fact that Janna, with her knockups, could have easily facilitated just getting some pokes in, and it just whittled and whittled down until the point where Ezreal could in fact jump in there and secure a kill, kill after kill. And once Ezreal starts getting those kills, he just easily snowballs ahead.
Yeah, Ezreal is pretty snowbally, especially since we talked about we have Spirit of the Elder Lizard, and this sort of build that he's going for, we're seeing right now, is sort of called the Blue Ezreal build. I'm pretty sure that's because all of the items are blue that he builds, but it's Spirit of the Elder Lizard, Manamune to turn into a Nirvana, Iceborne Gauntlet, and to top it off, a lot of times we see Last Whisper as well, and that really empowers him so much. He's able to kite very, very well and poke very well with his Q, which is something that applies on-hit effects, so we can see why it would be so powerful along with the Iceborne Gauntlet, as well as the Spirit of the Elder Lizard.
We're seeing in the mid lane, Janna and Ezreal kind of overextending a little bit without enough vision. They did see Mundo coming, as they did have a ward there, but you know, they thought they were going to try to wumbo combo the Soraka there, but not really hitting that Janna tornado, and it just really brought him into a bad state. Very nice job of Fizz though, really locking up the Ezreal, and Ezreal kind of condemning the Janna by kind of flashing over to her, and Janna got knocked up as well by the Shark.
I was kind of hoping for this game to be a little closer, so that we could talk about, we could see a lot of close team fights and talk about positioning in those team fights and how one little thing could easily edge out a win. But unfortunately, it looks like this game is basically a complete stomp.
Well,
Yeah,
right now,
I mean-
Jace, who was 5-0, is disconnected. So, oh, never mind, he's back. Hopefully, MF will come back soon too.
We are
Yeah.
seeing the Spirit of
Strong.
the Spectral Wraith on Vladimir, as we said earlier.
Yeah, it gives him spell vamp ability power and cooldown reduction, so he's getting some really, really nice stats off of that, and even though the mana regen is wasted on Vladimir, the rest of the items are still very, very good. And it once again spells out how cost efficient the item is, because if you're paying, say, that 400 extra gold to try to get the mana regen, then it's not really going to be all that worth it. But since the entire item is just such a low cost, then he can afford to waste that stat, because all the other stats are so good for the amount of gold it costs.
Especially for top laners. Top laners a lot of times will find themselves in a situation where they have 5-10 seconds to run over and try to farm up somebody's golems or wolves or something like that. So the bonus damage to the creeps, while not a major part of the purpose of that buy, Vladimir being such a farm-intensive champion, it certainly is one more factor.
Well, we did see there Ezreal almost picking up Soraka, and I do want to make the point that a lot of people we see actually in a lot of tournament games, they think they're gonna kill him. They're sure that this is gonna be the final skill shot or this is gonna be the final hit, and then after that they back off and they start walking in the other direction as the projectile's on its way, and it doesn't end up finishing them off, or they barrier, or they end up doing something that allows them to essentially live. And now you're kind of out of luck. The kill is not going to be yours, So I really don't like to see people do that. You don't see that as much in pro play because they tend to know to commit until it's finished. But in the tower dive tournaments, and even in solo queue a lot, you generally see people making that mistake.
Yeah, I just want to point out how kind of powerful the blue Ezreal build is. Within the span of the minutes we were talking, we saw 2 Ezreal ultimates fired off. That's just how low his cooldowns can get.
Yeah, his ultimate's almost up right now as well. It'll be up in, I think, 7 seconds, judging on the counter and how fast it's counting down. But that also applies to his Arcane Shift as well. He's Arcane Shifting. Let me actually click on him and take a look at his stats. Oh, I thought he died for a second, but his stats, his Arcane Shift is on a 9-second cooldown, which is very, very low for the free positioning that it allows you.
Yeah, especially as long as he's hitting his Qs, it goes down to basically like a 6-second cooldown.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, he's just got huge amounts of kiting going around here. No one on the enemy team can really pin him down, he's just putting out so much damage.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, this game is pretty much a stop. The red team is so far ahead. We're not really getting to talk about that clutch positioning that someone pulled off or whatnot. It's just kind of people chasing into Ezreal, he's kiting around, and there's just overall way too much damage on the red team, and Jace actually 11-0, he's doing quite a bit for the team as well. I think the blue team knows that, they're just going to be giving up right now, and we're going to get into the next game fairly soon. Actually, 3 20-minute win, it's gotta hurt.
Yeah, it's discouraging.
Yeah.
I'm just doing some math here. I'm trying to figure out exactly how often Ezreal ult. Actually, he's not even level 16, so it's not even level 2 ult. So.
Level 3. You mean?
Yeah, level 3. Sorry.
We're just kind of diving the fun at this point. So let's take a look at some of the other stuff around here. Alright, there we go, the game's over. Akali rushing Gunblade. I'm not really familiar with Akali at all. Does that still happen? Are you meant to sort of rush Gunblade on Akali?
Yeah, especially because you're doing a lot of auto attacking. Even with your combination, you have to put in at least 2 to 3 auto attacks. It builds a lot of stats for Akali. Riot actually talked about this, how hybrid items, in order to compensate for the fact that you're splitting your itemization, they make it very cost effective to build those items, and anyone who can usually utilize those items to like their full extent will always purchase those items. So you always see Hexblade usually on Akali and Jax. The slow proc is really helpful as well, considering that she has no built-in CC on her own without using up her escape utility.
That actually brings up a good point. But recently on Jax, I've been seeing a lot more Blade of the Ruined Kings built, and a lot of Jaxes are completely actually foregoing the Hextech Gunblade, saying, alright, I got a Blade of the Ruined King that's giving me a lot of my sustain stats that I need on Jax, I don't need the Gunblade. What do you guys think about that? Because I still think that Gunblade could be an integral part of his build because not only his ultimate but also Empower scales off of magic damage, although I think his ultimate scales off of both magic and physical damage, but I still think that it's an important part to his kit.
His ultimate gives him defenses based on his offensive stats. So the more AD he has, the more armor he gets during the ult, and the more AP he has, the more magic resist he gets. So if you're against a very magic damage heavy lineup, then it makes a lot of sense. Blade of the Ruin King has become really popular on him because so much of his kit is predicated around attack speed, where he's able to get so much done, and he also has a reposition and a stun and so many other things that are really, really strong. With his passive ramping up, it allows him a lot of right clicks. So he's one of the few champions in the game that buys a Blade of the Ruin King more for the passive than for the active. He already has Chase Down with Leap Strike. He already has lockup with Counter Strike. So really, it's all about making every single one of those right clicks count, and then getting a pretty decent amount of sustain going on along with it. So that's why with Jax it fits a little bit more of a niche role for what he wants. But again, if you find yourself up against the right kind of team, you'll want to go with the increased sustain and the extra magic resist that you get during the ultimate from having something like a Gunblade.
Alright, let's go ahead and find another game while we keep discussing some of this stuff. Hopefully this one will be a little closer.
Sounds good.
And sorry to be going back to the Gunblade, but there is the hidden passive component about it that a lot of people don't notice, which is that every time you make a attack or spell against another champion, it reduces the cooldown on Gunblade's active component, which is very useful for high attack speed hybrid champs like Elise and Jax, who can actually have Gunblade up for almost every engagement. It's just a nice boost of damage. It nukes for about 300. It slows them down, which is, again, something that both champions are kind of hurting for.
I actually was reading something very interesting before the stream. I didn't manage to get all the way through it. But on the Reign of Gaming site, Tuck359 did a write-up about his prediction for the All-Star Weekend, and he was saying that the North American scene is largely considered one of the weaker scenes in of all the regions. So I was wondering, what do you think that the North American team would be able to do to stop their first pick of China, who's known for more of a farm game than anything else?
I think North American might need to take quite a bit of a lesson from the Korean meta and force out objectives as early as possible, like an entirely early team comp, if they really want to push China away from, because we know that China has really good mechanics. They're very, very skilled mechanical players. However, they might not be as used to the aggressive objective-taking style of Korea, and North America might be able to replicate that, and that might help them on their way.
And one of the things I was going to mention is the fact that a lot of the, especially Asian scenes, are just a lot better in terms of their mechanics than the NA scene, whereas the NA, we have a couple of players who are really just out there and very, very skilled mechanically, but we don't have nearly as much as the China scene, or China and Korean scene, and Asian scene in general, actually. So that's really one of the biggest points where the NA scene is really lacking on.
Well, in all honesty, North America took League of Legends victory in Season 2, or its unofficial Season 2. It was WCG. I'm pretty sure North America won. They took it all.
Yeah, but at the same time, WCG places a bunch of players from the same country on a team. It's not necessarily they put a team into WCG.
Well, it's a weird situation. Like, the first WCG wasn't actually divided by country. It was CLG versus SK Gaming was the first final, and then the a North American team has never won like an official world championship. Like, CLG beat SK Gaming and what they were like was kind of the lead up for it, which was WCG 2010. But that was, that's really as close as North America's ever come. Fnatic won Season 1, and then obviously Taipei Assassins won Season 2.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time since North America was kind of considered to be the center of LoL.
I just want to touch on that a little bit. Something I think that a lot of people don't realize about why it's kind of difficult for North America to keep up is there's no really. It's a big country, and it's hard for there to be a central hub for where tournaments and stuff take place. A lot of players simply don't have the option to be traveling around all the time to different states and whatnot in order to take place in these tournaments. While in China and Korea, they're smaller countries and they usually have one very central location with high population, and that's where all the tournaments take place. So it's very easy for players to competitively train and practice.
Yeah, that's
Here's
definitely a
another
fair point.
question for you guys. Do you think that the NA scene would be stronger if the top teams in LCS were allowed to compete in smaller tourneys? Smaller tourneys. I just mean tourneys outside of LCS, because they could have the potential to face, you know, some of these Asian teams, or they could even have a chance to face some challenger teams, which it might not be as mechanically sound or as communicationally sound. Not a word, but still.
Yeah.
Then the challenger circuit still has some players who can come up with really good ideas and really good tactics, even though they might not be able to execute those tactics just as well as the top teams.
Well, one of the reasons why these there are two reasons I could think of why the old LAN tournaments really made a big impact on play, and one is the crowd. Like, you know, being able to play at a LAN used to be a big thing in Season 2. Like, there'd be a lot of players that'd be really good online, and they do really well, and then they choke in LANs. Now, you don't get that as LAN experience. Like, yeah, you're on a camera, but there aren't, you know, thousands of people shouting and cheering and, you know, right in front of your face. You don't have that anxiety. So I really think that that's one weakness that the NA scene will really have. Even like the EU scene, I believe has an audience. It's not as big as, like, you know, IEMs or IPLs, but, you know, still. And the second thing I think that would be a weakness of not coming to LANs really is going to be at LANs. Like at IPL, they had they always had the Asian teams invite, and I think at IEM it was more of a global scene rather than, oh, look, this is an NA only tournament, or this is a, you know, blank tournament. Like, it was really a lot more open as to the countries and the nationalities of players that you'd face. So, you know, with LCS, you're only playing in the NA circuit. Like, you still see other matches, you can still watch tournaments. You don't quite play against that as much. So that could be another weakness.
Well,
I mean,
someone mentioned. Sorry, let me give it just 1 second here.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned. I think the initial question was, would NA benefit from the LCS teams being able to play against other teams in high-pressure tournament competitive situations? Is that what you were getting at, Azaraki?
Basically.
Because obviously, they are scrimming. Like, very clearly they are playing against these teams. They are seeing a lot of the creative stuff that they're coming up with. The only thing that's really lacking is there being cash money on the line and the extra pressure that comes from it actually being involved with a quote-unquote tournament or a real tournament, as opposed to just the prep for LCS or stuff like that. So I think to a certain extent they're not necessarily missing out as far as creativity goes. I think that there was a reason that Cloud9, that Quantic were so highly lauded coming into their LCS promotion matches, is because they scrimmed against a lot of these LCS teams, and they knew how strong they were. They knew what a good position they were in, and the other teams knew it too. So I don't think that they're necessarily going to lose that much in that regard in the scene.
So I just want to speak a little bit about the whole LCS system. I think that Riot decided to do that simply because of the whole qualifying points thing, and the tournament grind for a lot of teams was very troublesome. And a lot of drama was going around about teams who just decided to throw final matches because they had enough qualifying points in order to get into a certain tournament or not. It's just a lot of drama was going on. Riot Games wanted to just finalize on that and say, alright, this is the system we're having in place, and it's going to work for everything. And there's still a lot of that high pressure, because as we saw, one team actually did disband. We saw MERN disband, and CLG was threatening to disband as well if they did lose at the split. So we do see opportunities for challenger teams to come up if they can practice their unique playstyles, or, you know, be at the same quality as the pro teams in each of the splits.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
We're actually going to talk a little bit about the game we're seeing right now, but one thing I really like is the fact that Draven is able to position himself very, very well in some of these fights. he's able to basically manipulate the way his axes are going to land, which is something that, as Draven, is very, very strong to have, because otherwise your positioning, either your positioning or your damage is going to falter if you can't get off those cues. So juggling two axes actually comes pretty naturally to this Draven, and one thing that the red team failed to do was basically focus him down and take him down, because he actually puts out a lot of damage right now, especially with the items he has, as well as the fact that he can pull off that positioning.
I actually, in that last fight, talking more about going back to the actual game we're in, I really like what Sona did as Diana was battling Jarvan, and I believe it was either TF or Zed down. I think it was Zed. Yeah, Zed and Jarvan. Diana almost getting taken down there, but Sona coming in, using the heal, negating one more auto attacks damage, and then using her ult, which had enough time to give her teammate to really clean up the team fight, and it actually made it so she escaped with her life. So Sona, very very good ult right there, and that's the reason why Sona's picked, is really because her ult is so impactful in team fights. And I really, isn't she getting buffed in the next patch?
She's getting a little bit of extra tankiness, 40 health as well as 2 armor, and some changes on the aura, on her W aura, I believe, Aria of Preservance. And what's basically happening is that when she uses it, the active armor in Magic Resist is being dropped. However, the passive, just straight up aura that she's giving off is going to be buffed, so she's getting a little bit more tanky with this next patch, but it's not too substantial. It's not something that's going to bring her into the basic, like, top, always pick the support.
Well, she already is one of the always pick ones, just because of her ultimate. It's so useful.
I wouldn't say always pick. She's used pretty often, but there are still supports that a lot of people would rather play,
Thresh.
and I do agree. Yeah, Thresh right now is a big one.
When you can
Banned every game.
Well, he's rightfully so. He's very strong in the right hands, and as we saw in our tower dive tournaments, oh my God, just some great Thresh play was coming out of. Trying to remember the support player's name right now. It's on my friends list. I'll see if I can't dig for his name. Dig for his name in between, but he was probably one of the showed Thresh play that even rivals like LCS players, and it was pretty crazy.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, it's just
this
a
game is
support
also looking at top. So we're not really going to see too much teamfight positioning top in this game either. But what were you saying?
I was saying, just going to the whole support thing. Now, the two very important things about support is you're either going to need to be able to initiate for the team or peel for the team. If you can't do either, you're not going to, like, it's not going to be a very popular support pick. That's why we see champions like Lulu, Thresh, Sona, Janna being the most popular picks, just because of the amount of utility added to the team in both being able to peel and initiate onto the enemy team.
Yeah, one interesting thing I'd like to ask is the fact that with the Season 3 items, we've been seeing a lot more venues for some supports to be able to build towards AP near the end of the game, although at the same time, we're not really seeing that happen all that much. Now, what do you think is the main reason for stuff like that not happening, for more of the sort of AP supports coming out? We did see a little jump with Elise being played as a support quite a bit, but what do you think is the main reason for that?
Quite honestly, it's just that they don't have the money for it. They gotta spend money on items like Sightstone, which is like 1.5k down the drain. That's a huge chunk. They gotta buy a load of Vision Wards. Supports actually, that's what you notice in a lot of lower elo supports don't pick up Vision Wards quite as often, and it can be super important in map control, especially since it denies the enemy team being able to have the same map control. And so yeah, games simply just don't last long enough for supports to have the kind of income or gold in order to fully itemize themselves for an AP build as well.
And if they do have the gold, it's already a snowball, and they don't really need to be doing it because other people can pick up that for them.
That's why when I do good on Lux support, always get Majais.
Yeah, they'd much rather like pick up a bulwark, something to solidify their team's, presence on the map.
Exactly, and the support's job is to make sure the carry is alive, and with the bulwark, you're just doing your job, and you're doing it with everybody else as well.
Yeah, so taking a look at some of the items in this game, I see a lot of standardness. I'm making up a lot of words today, but
You see
we see
the
Diana with
sorry, go on.
I'd have to agree though.
we see Diana with Zhonya's. That's fairly standard because she's always in the middle of a fight. Her kit basically places her in the middle of a fight in order to do damage. And in order to not be focused down and bursted down really quickly, she needs the Zhonya's as well as some of the stats it gives. Like stuff Blade of the Ruined King on Zed, very, very reliant on auto attacks, and it gives him that extra burst that he needs. We see Twisted Fate building towards Lich Bane. He's really good with that because it procs his pick a card, whatnot. A lot of very, very standard builds coming out.
Just by something else I noticed in this game that we can talk about, Nunu. Nunu actually received a buff to his jungling, because initially, in way back when, he was a really powerful jungler, and he really was well known for his counter jungling and things like that. But what do you think? Do you think we're gonna see him kind of have a resurgence, or he's gonna get played more? Because like I said, in season 1 and 2, Nunu was just the counter jungling king.
Well, the reason why we saw him in Season 1 and 2 being such a counter jungle king was because the jungle was a lot more nastier during those times. There wasn't any health buffs on the bigger minions, and the cooldown times the respawn times, excuse me, were a lot longer. So Nunu being able to get in there, still the big wraith, still camp, was a lot more effective than, say, when they switched the jungle to a newer jungle that was respawning faster. People farming picks were more powerful, and I don't really think we're gonna see that now, just because it's still this jungle still respawns pretty quickly for Nunu's consume to not really be as effective.
Yeah, and one thing
Honestly,
we actually saw way back when Nunu, that first time when Nunu became this huge counter jungler that a lot of different teams played, was mainly the fact that invading was a big thing. Stealing the enemy's jungle was, oh my god, what are you doing, sort of thing. People weren't used to that at the time, and at this point there are a lot of junglers that can do it, and at this time you have better coordination with your team and just more ways to counter jungle than you did back in the days when Nunu was that strong.
I mean, I'm kind of actually going to disagree here because I think that Nunu's, especially with the buff, what he was lacking earlier is a bit of early game presence, and with this buff to his early game presence, he's already a very strong pick in terms of supporting the whole we gotta push for objectives as fast as possible comp. This is why Cho'Gath especially has been so strong, because as soon as he hits 6, you're granted almost complete dominance over Dragon and Baron with the Feast Smite combination. Nunu gets this with the Consume Smite combination, and not only that, but he makes tower pushing really easily with his buff to 80 carries.
Yeah,
So I think we might actually see a resurgence in him.
I do agree with what Azza said, like and just in general what everyone said about, because the really big thing about Nunu was that counter jungling it mattered a lot more. However, I'd also have to agree with you in the fact that this buff will make Nunu a little bit of a faster jungler, and he's already a really good game. Like, he has a really powerful slow that's auto lock, so it's not, you can't really juke it once he gets it on you. He also has a speed up, so his lane is a little faster, whether he's getting top or bot. He doesn't have a lot in the damage department though, and he's not like, he doesn't really have any disruption. Like, he has his ultimate, which pretty much makes everyone scatter, but I mean later in the game it's not going to do all that much damage. I mean, for an ultimate that you have to stand there for like, that as long as you have to stand there, like 3 seconds or so channel time, I believe it is. I'm not sure if it's 3.5 or a little shorter than that even. But
well, a lot of it's a visual effect as well. When they see it, right, it's zoning out the opponents. They kind of really want to stop it, because if they don't stop it, it does put out a huge chunk of damage. I think it goes all the way up to a 1.5k base or something, which is enormous. He doesn't even have to build any items into it to deal a huge amount of damage. And again, the whole talking about the whole buff thing, it's just a power multiplier. It makes any of your champions that are doing well do even better. And like, I think it's a 50% increase in move speed and attack speed, and it's just huge when you're moving for objectives early on.
I think in terms of the late game Nunu, in terms of his ultimate anyway, you don't really use it for damage anyway. You're not going to be building straight up AP Nunu, so you're not going to have all that much magic penetration. You're going to be building more towards tank. And what his ultimate is really meant to do towards the late game in these team fights is to basically royally screw up your enemy team's positioning.
Soak up
it's a
a stun.
huge AoE slow.
Yes.
It basically forces people to back off from some of your carries as well. Gives your carries better positioning because if, say, Jarvan were to run into the fight, his running speed would be very, very low. Although Jarvan's not really the best example. I just picked him because he was in this game and he's one of the chaser types. He has a lot of gap closures, so it's not going to affect him as much as it would affect someone like, say, Renekton or other champions that require you to run through a team in order to get the positioning. And it also hurts AD carries quite a bit as well, because AD carries and casters, because it slows auto attack speed. And a great steal right there by the red team.
That was just amazing.
Nice.
But with the consume change, what I kind of feel that we could start seeing is seeing more Nunu bot lane, because something that was brought up yesterday was a Blitzcrank that was running Smite, and this double Smite thing that seems to be the flavor of the month right now. It'll bring even more dragon control to, let's say, that lane. Like if you have a Cho'Gath in the jungle and Nunu in bottom lane, with Consume, Smite, and Cho'Gath's ultimate, it's just going to give you complete dragon dominance, which will give you that.
You could probably, honestly, with all those, you could do dragon at like level 4 or something like that. Like
Easily.
Something ridiculous.
It's always a threat there, and that's something that the other team would have to keep aware of.
I will say that if we do see Nunu if we do see Nunu in the bot lane, we won't have him probably see him take Smite, because like we were mentioning earlier, AD carry's not really taking as many offensive summoner spells, so the support has really been taken on as it's like, oh, it's your duty to take the Ignite now, or it's you still need to take the Exhaust to support us. Like they take the whatever summoner spell that they think is the best. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that the new Consume would do, is it allowed Nunu, a support Nunu, to take that Exhaust spell in place of, like, let's say the Blitzcrank who took Smite. So that gives them a huge advantage in lane, because they have a slow and something to cut the damage, and then Nunu can keep him slowed, allow your AD carry not only to put out more damage, but to keep up with anything that he might try to get away. Because one of the scariest things I find when I'm fighting against a Nunu lane and with another AD carry is that if I'm like even slightly overextended, they could just get on me and kill me right away.
It's also worth pointing out that another big part of why Blitzcranks have started running Smite is for smiting lane creeps that people are hiding behind. That's how you play against Blitzcrank, is you just hide behind creeps and harass and farm. And now he has the opportunity to remove one creep while the fist is already coming out if he knows it's going to land. So that's another reason too, is it also just increases his lane pressure. It's not just about the dragon control and whatnot.
It's kind of like Double Lift. He was originally popular for Blitzcrank, right? And he was the first one who really did the ulting the minions and then pulling instantly, and not using his ult after the pull.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about that when the Smite on Blitzcrank was brought up.
That's amazing. But hey, that's Double Lift. He's been Blitzcrank pro since day one.
Well, I don't know if he's the one.
Yeah, season 1, he was the one who ran Blitzcrank in professional tournaments.
Alright, and that was something I really wanted to point out right there. Even though it is Jarvan, that was a great Nunu ultimate, because Jarvan had jumped into the fight and he couldn't chase any longer. He had already used his ultimate, he had already used his gap closers to get closer to the enemy team to try to lock them up. And the only thing left he could do is actually run at the enemy champions, and Nunu's ultimate completely shut him down from that. I think it's like a 70% slow or something of the sort. Or 50%.
Yeah, just created this huge wall where if they walk into it, they take a huge amount of damage as well.
Yeah, we
also, like, the team doesn't want to chase into it.
Take a lot of damage.
I wonder how a Lulu ult would work on like a Nunu. Like, with like helping keep people in the channel. If Lulu ulted you, would that interrupt your own channel? Or that just knocks everyone around you up. So
I don't think it would, but I don't think I've ever seen it done. But I don't imagine that it would interrupt the channel.
yeah, that I don't know. That might be like having some
if
interesting
it's
ults.
on
Like
your
maybe
team, then it's not gonna knock
Oriana Nunu even could be a possibility. And I actually, if anyone runs it, it'd be Saint Vicious because he kind of likes Nunu and Jackie's always been really good on Oriana.
Yeah. And I just want to go back to Blood Boil for a second. It's kind of like, that's kind of Nunu's damage to us. It's damage that your AD carry couldn't be able to put out without Nunu there. So it's just by an extension, you're basically giving a 7th item to your AD carry. You're giving him free Phantom Dancer minus the critical strike. And so your AD carry is just going to have that much more DPS over the enemy AD carry, and that's damage that Nunu's adding to the team.
And still, the items this game are very, very standard, except for the fact that Miss Fortune has a Hex Drinker.
Oh,
So
is Lichbane standard on Diana?
Yeah, it's pretty standard. She auto
Yeah,
attacks
Lichbane has
quite a bit.
become the new Nashor's 2 for Diana.
Okay, but
So
Hex
the
Drinker
fact
on
that
Miss
Miss Fortune has a Hex Drinker, it's just a testament to the amount of AP damage that the blue team has. They have every single person on their team doing magic damage except for Draven. So I can see why she picked that up, although personally I think I would have rather seen a straight up offensive item on her, something a little bit more toned towards AD carries, because we do see the fact that Jarvan is on his way to picking up the Bulwark.
Yeah, honestly, I think something that would have been better is a Quicksilver Sash into a Mercurial Scimitar. She would have gotten some magic resist, and also just getting that escape is a really nice AD carry item. And I mean, they do have a Jarvan and they do have a Nami, fairly good healers, both of them. They don't have the biggest front line. I mean, Zed just needs a Warmogs and he'll instantly be a scary front line. I do have to say though, I really think the tides of this game can still be turned into red team's favor, because we are seeing this giant assassin comp come out by the blue team. Assassin comps, if the hyper late game gets achieved, you know, it just makes their job a whole lot harder, because everyone has the tank item and all their damage items. So, you know, I think we're slowly, other than Sona, who really it's just a good support, not really an assassin support though. But other than Sona, we're seeing like a lot of picking. Like we see the Cassidy and the Diana, Nunu to speed either one of them up, and the Draven is also very fast.
Yeah, Sona does provide that speed buff, and I also feel that the Sona pick was also for the ultimate there, just because they don't really have that much hard CC on their team.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think they have any, except they have a lot of slow though. A whole lot of. Oh, they have stand aside. I mean, is that as hard CC? I don't know.
Technically, it is a hard
Technically, yeah.
CC because it can interrupt and stop movement and whatnot.
It's a disable.
It is a disable. However, it's pretty short. It's really reliant on landing a skill shot that's not very long range in the first place. So it's not a very reliable source of CC. So yeah, Sona pick could be also used for Crescendo.
I just want to say, in looking at this fight and how it went down, MF's positioning really wasn't all that great, and I also have to say again that this Zed just needs a Warmog. Like Zed, he does have a lot of burst damage, but you need to survive longer than, you know, a Hex Drinker is going to be able to, especially against this comp. Like I
Not only
really
that,
think
the
that
red team is hurting for tanking items.
yeah, they don't have any. They don't even have a Bulwark on Nami.
It's just Jarvan. Jarvan is the only person who's basically building tank items, and that's the Aegis. He's not getting his items fast enough. Neither is really anyone on his team. Like you said, Zed should be building a little bit more towards survivability. Yeah. So another
I just want to
fairly...
talk. Sorry.
Go for
I
it.
just want to talk a little bit about the going back to the Hex Drinker on Miss Fortune. This is something we're actually seeing a lot more of. Not the Hex Drinker itself, but teams are building their team comps in order to force teams to build magic resist, because as we spoke earlier, magic resist items aren't all that cost efficient sometimes. You know, so we see a lot of AD top people picking up Sunfire, and whatnot. They want to put out as much AP damage as possible so their AD carry can shred through people once they've seen the other team build some magic resist items. In particular, we see like the Asian scene utilizing this very well. They always have an AP pop. This is why Rumble is one of the strongest picks at the moment for top lane.
Is this mic breaking up for anyone else?
Yeah, a little bit. But I did find another game. It has Pobelter, Altec, which I believe are the is the bot lane for Curse Academy.
Pobelter is the mid laner.
So he's the mid lane. So they're just having fun, unless he's playing mid lane Vayne for no reason. But we are seeing them do. Is Altec the support or is he the AD? I don't.
AD carry.
Yeah.
He's the AD carry. Tian Chao is the top laner for a team that has Brunchu, formerly of LCS fame, and that is one of Wild Turtle's Smurfs. So that is Wild Turtle playing the Kog'Maw. RF Legendary is a really well-known Nidalee solo queue player. He's arguably one of the finer Nidalee players on the ladder, but apparently when he's not playing Nidalee, he just plays Blitzcrank because that's what we saw him earlier.
Yeah.
Today as well.
This is the second.
Unfortunately, Red Team already
Blitzcrank
won.
game.
They have the ultimate Kog'Maw skin, so GG Blue, no re.
GG no re. Well, we are just coming in this game immediately seeing just how powerful Blitzcrank's displacement is, but Thresh doing a very nice job there, actually waiting till Kog'Maw's range was kind of reduced. His W was off, his active was done, and then he flashed away, and they weren't able to get that killing blow on him.
And so already we're seeing Vayne starting to build towards Blade of the Ruined King, which is a good idea on her, to be honest, because she scales off of attack speed more than anything else. Her Q doesn't increase her attack damage by a percentage amount, so the more attack damage she has, the harder her Q will hit after she tumbles. The harder the next auto attack will hit after she tumbles. But at the same time, she just scales on attack speed much better when she gets her Silver Bolt procs out. And unfortunately in the bottom lane, we just saw her attack into Kog'Maw and I guess just underestimated the amount of displacement and CC that Blitzcrank had. And I think, actually, Altec playing pretty well right there. Although unfortunately getting hooked at that last
That's
moment.
2 kills for RF Legendary. And I'm kind of confused to see Bren top. When I first came into this game, I thought, wait, where's Bren? I was like, Kennen top, Bren middle, Nautilus jungle, or something that we've seen recently because a YouTuber did it. Is Crit Chance Nautilus was something that I've been seeing in games a lot more. Not really in the meta much, but we are seeing. What do you guys think of Nautilus as a jungler, just in general? Because he's someone who we've seen in higher elo play. I think we've seen in tournament play, very, very scarcely. I don't think we've seen him in quite a while. But he used to be pretty popular as just a CC master. But what do you guys think of him?
I think sort of the jungle in general has sort of shifted away from the CC master, but someone was about to talk, I'll just let them do it.
Go for it. I was pretty much saying the same thing there, so you got it.
Yeah, we're not really seeing those big CC masters anymore, although Sejuani is coming back into favor, who is one of the big CC masters, and she's just, I think the main reason she's starting to get played a lot more often is because of those recent changes to her, and I sort of want to see a little bit more in terms of big CC heavy junglers.
Yeah, like you don't really see the heavy engagers like Maokai or
yeah, Maokai. Whatever happened to him? Damn.
I really just think
it's like King Tail.
He doesn't do as enough damage. Like he has a lot of CC and he has a good support role going on for him. His ultimate is very, very good just for supporting team fights, but I just don't think he really fits as well as he used to. I mean, he still seems like he'd be a strong pick.
There's just the way the meta has shifted. The meta right now is basically this big giant AoE burst. See how fast you can put out a lot of damage on as many of the enemy team members as possible, and end the fight before they have a chance to respond. And that's really why we've been seeing more towards champions like Sona, who have the crescendo, very, very big AoE stun sort of thing, and even Sejuani helps with that full AoE burst, which is why she's sort of a CC machine that's being played more often. Whereas Nautilus, he's actually geared a little bit more towards sustained fights. He's got a lot of CC on his entire kit, CC that can be reapplied to a bunch of different people. And outside of his ultimate, he doesn't really have a lot of CC that he lands on the entirety of the enemy team, and even his ultimate at that point isn't really the biggest in terms of AoE. It'll knock up anyone who's in its path, but it's not a very big AoE in the first place.
So Malphus, what do you have to say about this? Because you've been casting a little bit longer than the rest of us, just time-wise. You've been able to observe the shift a little more.
Yeah, I tend to disagree a little bit because what the big change that happened in the jungle as we started going into Season 3 was that people started picking junglers that were more about controlling zones during team fights. That was sort of the biggest thing. So like Xin Zhao became really popular, Jarvan became really popular because they both had the opportunity to use their ultimates and kind of dictate the shape and pacing of a fight. And Xin Zhao and Jarvan in particular were considered to be stronger picks than just about anybody else because of the additional armor shred they supplied. So you'd stack that up with like a Renekton or something like that, and all of a sudden your team fights were basically auto win. Now those guys aren't nearly as strong, and we're starting to see that people are shifting away from that. Nautilus has made a huge resurgence as a jungler. I mean, having 6 forms of CC is just downright ridiculous. And he does have pretty decent sustain damage during a fight if he's not focused, which gives you incentive to focus him, which is de-incentivized by the fact that he is tanky as a mother. So basically, I think he's going to get nerfed. I think they over-buffed his level 1. I think that they're going to take some of the power back off of that because while he hasn't seen that much play in the US just yet, he's very popular in Europe and he is extremely, extremely strong.
Yeah, I think there's already some PE nerfs that are going to be going through on Nautilus. For the next patch, they will be reducing his power level by a bit.
What do you think about Maokai, Alex? Because he, you even mentioned that they want to be able to control zones of the fight, but that's something that Maokai actually can do. He has the damage reduction, which could even counter being forced to stay in a zone with like a Jarvan ult or something.
The 15% reduction on damage isn't palpable enough to make people want to change when they team fight. You look at so many champions, especially in high-end competitive play, where it becomes so much more crucial. Like, you take a champion like Karthus. Karthus not only puts out massive, massive amounts of damage, but he creates a zone of the map where once he dies, people don't want to fight anymore. Jarvan creates a zone of the map where you cannot move through Cataclysm, and Xin Zhao literally just pushes everybody away and disperses them. Maokai doesn't have that much power as far as CC goes. He doesn't keep up with Nautilus. His Twisted Advance is great, but it's also really risky for ganks. And the knockback on Arcane Smash and the slow associated with it, neither of those are really strong enough to create those kinds of do not dive my carry zones. At least not in the same kind of way that Jarvan or Xin Zhao do. Also, Maokai isn't as good a diver as Jarvan or Xin Zhao, so if he dives in, like, all he brings is CC. So if he pops the Shurelya's or flashes forward and gets a Twisted Advance off, and the team is able to zone the rest of the side away, and no one's really able to join up with him, Maokai alone isn't going to terrify anybody. He's on his own. He's not going to be going through teams and killing people. Whereas if a Xin Zhao doesn't fall down within the first 5 seconds of diving onto a carry, that carry is probably going to die. So I think that's the biggest reason why Maokai kind of stopped being picked up, is just so many other people were diving better than him, dealing more damage than him, and controlling zones of team fights better than he is.
I definitely have to agree with you there. He's not a very threatening champion when it comes to his damage output. I mean, and since the whole conversation really stemmed from Nautilus, I'd have to say that Nautilus, it doesn't have as much damage either than someone like Xin Zhao or Jarvan, but he definitely his dots can get pretty massive, and he has more CC than even Maokai. So I think do you think he's still seen a lot because he really makes up for a lot of weaknesses that Maokai might have?
The biggest thing about Nautilus's CC is that it can be reapplied and spammed very, very easily, and that just makes it more numerous and more threatening than a CC of someone like Maokai.
He could technically just like hit everyone in the team fight once and stun them all. right? Because
Yeah.
it's the
a
first.
snare.
It's on a person. It's on a person every 6 seconds, right?
You can reapply it on the same person after 6 seconds, or you can hit a different person.
Yeah, so you could like
This
just
effect cannot trigger on the same target,
Yeah.
unless 12 seconds have passed.
So you can
Same
just go
target.
around smacking different people on the team, and they're all the same.
and then use your ultimate. It knocks probably half the team up. You know.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Great
Brilliant
fresh
rush buy.
appreciation.
Such a good rush buy.
Man,
Yeah.
that was great.
You guys on the stream just witnessed exactly how powerful Thresh is. You know, especially if you know how to do it. He's just got really good fight control as a support. He can either initiate or peel. So he's filled really both of what we said earlier was what you need as a good support. He's also got some decent damage on him.
Oh yeah. This is ability to appeal and drag people into fights is so great, and his ultimate just zones, like there's a huge zone of control that it emits.
That was a brilliant
So-
play by Pobelter. I don't know if your guys' cameras off stream was watching that, but that Blitzcrank almost really displaced Pobelter away from the Kog'Maw, and he even I don't think he got his knock-up off in time. The flash was so well timed that he was literally able to say, okay, you displaced me from Kog'Maw, I'm going to get a little more ground, and flash continuing to, you know, go in the opposite direction, and Kog'Maw wasn't able to get his passive on him.
One of the things I'd like to mention about this bot lane is that we do have a late game carry sort of matchup where we have Vayne and Kog'Maw, who are both known as the late game big shredders, and they both have percentage damage on their ultimates. And one thing that I think, oh sorry, not ultimates, what am I saying? That they both have percent damage on some of their spells. And one of the main things that I think isn't working right for Kog'Maw in this sort of game is the fact that he's not playing to his own late game carriness as much as Vayne is. Basically, Vayne just flat out stronger than Kog'Maw. But the thing about Kog'Maw is that Kog'Maw outranges Vayne heavily, but he's not really able to use that at all. As we see right there, the Thresh pulled him in, you know, he couldn't stay at a distance from Vayne, so Vayne got some easy auto attacks down on him and was able to end up soloing him, whereas Kog'Maw, he wants to stay around the edges of the fight. He outranges a lot of AD carries once he puts his W on, and his ultimate also has a very long range, so he's really meant to stay near the outskirts of the fight or near the very edges of the fight and put out damage that way, and he puts out a lot of it, just not as much as Vayne if Vayne is right up in your face.
I know he has like what the longest or second longest range. I believe it's either him or Tristana with draw bead, or maybe Twitch with his ult. I'm not quite sure. I think Kog'Maw it's 950 range.
I think that's what maxed out as. I'm not sure. We can always look it up. Hold on.
You can look it up here. It's increases.
It goes up 210. I can't remember what his base attack range is.
Twitch ult has the long range.
It has 900, or does it increase it by 900? I don't know.
Increases, I think.
It increases by 250.
Well, that was Twitch ult is what we were talking about there, but let's search.
Kog'Maw increases
No,
by
2
210 at max
210.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bioarcane Barrage is 210.
so that puts him
Increases
at 710 range.
710.
And we think that normally AD carries have auto attack ranges between 500 and 650 about. So he outranges most AD carries with that. Does anyone know about
Very grand.
Tristana's draw?
Tristana's draw bead is
Goes up to 713 or 702.
703. So her base range is 550. So that's literally about 1200 range. So
Tristana?
Did you say it goes up to?
no, it says no. It's a total of 703, like with her passive. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
no. It says here the
No.
bonus is 153. So it's
Okay.
So
703.
Kog'Maw still outranges that.
Yeah,
with his double
Kog'Maw,
shot.
but just barely.
Yeah.
And
Twitch gains 300, so he moves up to 850.
Alright.
And then there's the 850 length line, which is
Although-
the attack range.
At the same time, Twitch's is an ultimate, so it's going to be on
Yeah.
a much longer cooldown, and it's going to last much shorter than the other abilities. But yeah, considering Vayne actually has a pretty low auto attack range, I think it's hovering around like 550 or 500, somewhere of the sort. Kog'Maw can really use range to outplay her, but at the same time, she also has a lot of gap closers, so he's really going to need to be fighting as a team. He really can't 1v1 or maybe 2v2 Vayne. Let's take a look at this team fight and how it's going. Kennen's ultimate catching 2 people out on the very edge of its range, so that was a pretty good play by him right there. And it's a nice try by Thresh in order to disrupt that fight, but I think, like we said before, the red team, they just have so much CC on their entire kits. We have Kennen's basically
yeah.
passive, who puts out a lot of CC, especially with his ultimate. We have Nautilus, who, as we've talked about multiple times, is just a big CC machine. And we also have Blitzcrank, who puts out a lot of CC as well.
Yeah, Kennen really was popularized in the Korean scene about a month. We've seen him played a lot. He's become really strong. I see him in OGN a lot. I think he's one of the most picked for a lot of people now, just because of the fact that people are realizing exactly how much damage and CC he brings to a team fight. I mean, his ultimate is just amazingly high CC.
also
And
combo
he was really popular during Season 2, actually, and then he fell a bit out of favor after they hit him with some successive nerfs.
And then
I mean, it's
people realize
interesting that he's
still
coming
good.
back into play, yeah.
Yeah, do you guys remember the Kennen Vlad?
Yeah, the
That was- that was
Kennen,
the big
it's
thing.
when everyone was stacking Wodas.
Yeah, double Woda was popular back then as well.
Turtle kind of turned around there, got hit by a nasty slow, and gets picked up. Yeah, he's really playing a little more upfront and personal, and I think definitely Kog'Maw with a Borg, you really need to. And there's that damage from Thresh I was talking about.
I don't know if you need to. The Blade of the Ruined King active is very powerful, but I don't think he really wants to be fighting close up just because he has the Blade of the Ruined King.
No,
Its
he
base
should-
stats really give him a lot of attack speed as well as life steal on its own, plus the target's current health damage. So if Kog'Maw is really playing to the fact that he has the Blade of the Ruined King and purposely going in to fight up front and personal, then I think it's a mistake on his part. I would really much rather see him stay near the edge of the fight and use the Blade of the Ruined King if someone gets close.
It's like an
Use it,
escape.
say if someone dives on him, he can use the Blade of the Ruined King to, like you said, help him escape, help him live throughout a team fight. He can use it then, and I think that would be a much better use of it rather than just using it for its upfront burst.
It definitely is. Kog'Maw just definitely one of those champions who really wants and at times needs a bodyguard there to make sure that people aren't getting onto him, so he can just sit back and spit on people all day. With that range, it'll be quite easy for Nautilus and Blitzcrank there for him just to sit back and pelt people and them not even know what hit him.
Yeah, Kennen's actually a really good addition to this composition as well, because like that team fight that we saw outside the Dragon area, Kennen popped his ultimate and then just kind of stood on the ramp. And then Zon used like a little bit later once he thought people were turning back around, and no one could go down the ramp. No one could even remotely touch the Kog'Maw.
That's a protect the Kog'Maw comp,
Yeah, it is. It's completely protect the Kog'Maw.
but that's what you need to do with Kog'Maw. Like
Yeah,
as Azeroth
I
built
mean-
around him.
Other than the brand, I guess the brand doesn't really fit into the protected Kog'Maw.
He's
I'm wondering
Brand.
that
He's
myself,
just there. He's
where
having
Brand
fun.
actually comes into this comp. Anyone have any ideas?
I think it's
Well,
solo
we know
queue.
Brand is really sort of a weird pick in general, not even just for this comp, but we don't really see him played it at all recently.
He has
He does
AOE.
yeah, he does provide some AoE damage. He has okay range, and he does have some stun. But really, I don't think he does it exactly like. He isn't the best pick. I think he was just a pick.
Just the guy felt like
Yes.
playing Brand that day.
Yeah.
Huge positioning error on there by Mainspur. Actually, she got caught out in front, as you could see, and you saw just all of the AOE came out at once from the from purple side team, and the CC was just too much for her to get away.
Yeah, Kennen's been placing some really nice ultimate initiations. getting a lot
Yeah,
of
it's important to
damage
bear in
while
mind
it's done.
that it's always Blitzcrank or Nautilus that are actually putting off the initial initiation rather than Kennen.
Well,
Because you want to use it off.
the cannons with the follow-up. It's
Exactly.
timed really
Right,
well.
it's
though.
best to use Kennen's ults to follow up rather than to actually start it. It gives the opponents a lot less time to actually properly position themselves against it.
And just even if they can, even if Blitzcrank or Nautilus can land their hooks and get someone out of position, they could easily jump on them, and then Kennen has more of a chance to get in there, and they easily win the team fight 4v5, with the 4 being locked down by Kennen's ult.
Right, it just doesn't let the enemy's team come and really back up the person who got caught without suffering a log punishment in return.
And taking a look at some of the builds real quick. Go ahead and say what you were saying, or what you were
I
about
was
to say.
just gonna say that this advantage that Red really has is their ability to dictate these engagements, and that's something that can't be overlooked. Just the ability to say, we're gonna fight here and we're gonna fight now is so powerful in League that really more teams should be centered around knowing that knowing that you want that advantage. And even though they have Thresh who can kind of do that and kind of drag people in there, the ability of Nautilus and Blitzcrank to do that just overwhelms the blue team.
I do.
Does in this scenario. I think the blue team could work around their positioning a little bit better to keep Pobelter alive, because he's really the thing that's going to help the blue team win some of these team fights. And as we've been seeing, he's been caught out near the beginning of most of these fights, but I like the damage put out on Wild Turtle. They did a great job on focusing him, and that's really what they needed to do. And another reason why Nocturne is such a strong pick right now is because even though his ultimate's range got nerfed way back and it's not what it used to be, it's still very, very good for initiating from a distance.
Yeah, and talking about protecting Vayne in fights, I mean, I know in that fight they really had the upper hand, so there was really no protection needed. They kind of caught 2 members, actually 3 members out of the red team, and they were able to clean that up so fast. Wild Turtle, I think, maybe got 2 auto attacks in that fight off, and he just kind of got bursted down. But it's a lot easier to protect the Kog'Maw than it is to protect the Vayne. And
It is.
just that could be, I mean, Vayne is a little bit stronger, has a little more mobility than Kog'Maw, just a little bit. Kog'Maw's really only real mobility is his slow, and that's you know a display.
Pseudo mobility.
Yeah, that's a really pseudo kind of replacement mobility, because it really only disables people from charging at him as fast, and you know it's jukeable, and you can really get out. And very nice job by Pobelter in there in the top lane.
And even if Pobelter didn't get the jump on him, he still would have won that engagement, because, like we said before, Vayne is just a stronger champion. Well, not champion, but stronger flat-out damage than Kog'Maw has. And like I said, Kog'Maw's going to have to play towards his range, and Red Team has been doing that very well until these past fights where they've just been getting caught out one by one is really what's happening here.
Yeah, they won a few fights and they just got cocky after that, and Kyler hasn't been staying behind his bodyguards there, and just been giving these fights to blue.
So
They're just giving kills to Pobelter.
Just giving kills to Vayne, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I want to pull attention to actually is that you see in a lot of teams now, especially as you approach upper levels, is that the jungler is the one that always builds the Aegis and not the support. The support usually rather goes for the Iron Solari. The locket.
One of the biggest reasons for the supports to pick up the Locket of the Iron Solari is because the active aura is the only aura on it, and you can use that in the beginning of a fight, and obviously supports are usually squishy. They're more so used for the utility and CC rather than damage or anything like that, or tankiness. So he can pop the Locket of the Iron Solari, and he can die afterwards, and the full benefit from Locket is going to be there for his team. Whereas if something like the Runic Bulwark or the Aegis, something with a persistent aura, if the support picks that up and the support is the first one to die in the fight, then that buff is permanently lost, and for the remaining 75% of the fight, their team is not going to have that sort of buff, because the support had it and the support died too quickly.
It's also worth pointing out that against a lot of team compositions, you really want to have a bulwark right away, and your support can build them, but it'll take them ages.
Huh. I need to read chat about what they
Never
said
again.
about that pun.
Please. Oh god, never again.
So, yeah.
Well,
No, but
that-
Bye,
that
Dice.
is actually a reason.
Oh wait, no, sorry. Goodbye, Flaming. Dice is just saying bye to Flaming.
that is a good point. I thought he was saying bye to the brand who just got melted and trolled a little bit by Pobelto. But again, they need to fight a team fight here. The red team kind of just getting caught out one by one. Their team fight's really, really strong, and we've seen them win. Excuse me, the last 2 or 3 team fights that they've actually been a part of, but it doesn't really work when you're engaging one at a time or you get caught out, and that's kind of what's happening right now. Vayne just getting some free kills here. Like, as you saw, Nautilus just engaged and no one followed him up.
Yeah, Blitzcrank
He didn't
with
have
the
anyone to follow him up. Blitzcrank and Kog'Maw were too far back to do anything about it, and even then, there are only 3 of them. Did Altec throw a flash for that?
I don't know
really
why.
think that was worth it. I don't think he could have picked up
They all
anything
take
at that
flashed.
point. Going back into the fight, I have no problem with him trying to do that. The problem is that he blew the flash on the engagement, which is certainly not worth it. He got absolutely nothing out of using that flash.
Pobelter's a monster.
Yeah.
He's always been really good. He used to be the youngest person in the pro scene, right? Like,
Altec is younger than him.
Altec's young, well, now, but how long has he been involved in the pro scene? Like,
I thought Voivoy was the youngest because he wasn't even allowed in one of the MLGs because he was too young.
how
Maybe
old
I
Like, they had to
say,
find
but
a s-
I know that when they won
V-Man,
the season 1 finale, or season 1 finals, Cyanide from Fnatic was actually 16 at the time, I believe. When
Yeah,
he-
Voivoy was 16 as well when he was trying to get into the Vegas. It was MLG Vegas, and he couldn't get in because of the venue rules.
Wait, someone say V-Man?
I said Voivoy.
Okay, I was like, you said V-Man. I'm like, that's an actual player. You can't use that
Yes,
abbreviation.
I
We're-
forgot about that.
We're not talking about Jesus here.
Yeah. But yeah, Voivoy, he was 16, I think, when he entered the competitive scene as well. And I think that's a bit of a problem with some of the competitive players is that they're too young to participate at the moment, and they would have to wait till season 4 to get in.
That's fine. I mean, I really don't think that's that big a deal. It's just wait till
Yeah.
you're older.
Some of the young talent is really some of the better players, to be honest.
Well, they always bring something fresh and new. Like when you get like a new mind, they're always gonna think in a slightly different way, even if they're just a few years apart, like 5 years. You know, just the way they're taught, the way they're learned, the way people grow up. Like it just lets them take in information in different ways. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that could actually have an effect to how people learn and treat the game, or at least treat information in the game. But that's some analysis that's completely outside the game, bit too in depth.
And to give you guys a quick rundown of who we are once again, I am Azeraki Dragon. And everyone just introduce yourself, so I'm Azeraki Dragon.
I am Dan
Yeah.
Lasher.
Fancy circling right here.
I am. Everyone knows who I am. I'm Saki Man. Hi guys, and the last person in here is Malphus.
Yeah,
There you go. I knew that there was this big standoff of, alright, I want to let someone else say their intro first because I don't want to talk at the same time. It actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
Didn't have very many overlaps of that.
Well, it looks like we're gonna see a team fight here. Very, very nice Nautilus ult used to keep Vayne in the back. Vayne ultimately gonna kill Nautilus, but I mean, he did keep him out of the fight. Unfortunately, Elise and just Thresh's displacement was really enough to just pick up everybody. I think Nocturne and Rise, did a whole lot in that fight too. They ultimately, attacked Red Team's backline, which they don't really have. They have Kog'Maw, but I still feel like he could be farther back than he is.
Yeah, and that fight, for the most part, where the red team went wrong was that the fact that there was divided focus, there wasn't enough people after Pobelter, and Pobelter was actually had a pretty good job of positioning near the back of that fight, and Nautilus had to dive in too far, there wasn't enough follow-up with him, or they could have stayed near the outskirts of the fight and picked someone else down. If Pobelter was going to stay at the very back of the fight and wait for an engagement like that, they could easily poke down one of the frontliners or one of the sort of midliners, I guess. Basically people who aren't extremely tanky, but still standing in between the red team and thing. Oh, nice pull.
That was a very nice combo between the cannon and the blitz. And they might look to actually engage a little more. But too much CC. The lantern aura, I believe, slows, correct?
No.
No.
The lantern
Just
was
give
No,
us-
no, no.
No.
Oh my god, can we please not give Thresh any more CC than he has?
Does it
Yeah.
slow? Does it slow on hit? I thought it had
No.
some sort of
No,
slow.
it
No, no, no.
No,
his,
just the
his
shield.
The flay, the knockback, or the pull in, is the one that has the slow on it.
No,
I
okay.
think it might be Flay.
I'm wondering
Yeah.
why. I'm wondering why he threw the lantern. Maybe he's trying to scare him off. Be like, boo. Just scare tactics. Be like, I remember. That'd be something I'd always see on Lux. Just like, you'd suddenly just be waiting, or you'd be waiting, and then Lux might be under a tower, and just to scare you, she'd throw her shield out in your direction. I mean, you'd only have to hit her, but you'd be like, ha, take that. You know.
Big mistake actually coming from Blue Side. They gave him the Baron, but not only that, but Nocturne, one of the tankier members of the team, just dived in and got killed. So I think they're actually going to look to try to close out the game now. This is like the only chance they're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nocturne a big part of the team fights, and that Thresh box prevented Kennen from getting in right deep in the middle of the fight. So that was a really good box. He had to blow his flash immediately, and now, I was gonna say Vayne was just gonna clean up, but it looks like Kog'Maw able to do it first.
That was just far too much synergy on the red team's part. I love the Nautilus ult in combination with the Cannon's ultimate, basically keeping people in range of Cannon throughout the entire time. He ulted someone in the very back line, he ulted Pobelter, and everyone on the way got knocked up. And at the same time, Cannon was in the way himself, so everyone got knocked up in Cannon's ultimate, so much more damage put out, and it really, really helped them in that fight. I love that play.
Might actually see Nocturne being taken down. Gets knocked up. Very nice job of Kennen there to actually burn a spell on him just so the knockup would go through.
This is fairly rare, but I think the red team is actually going to win this game at a gold deficit.
Yeah, they just kept getting out of position. It's quite surprising that they were able to come back with just that one dive on that Baron.
Yeah, it really shows you that in this late game, those spawn timers matter so much.
There's
They
always a
were
late
missing
game.
out on Nocturne, who's really the team's biggest tank at this point. They're missing out on the bulwark that entire fight. They missed out on the fact that Nocturne's
Fear.
basically just going in the middle of the fight, fearing people, distracting the attention, body blocking a lot of skill shots. So, unfortunately, not the best idea on Nocturne, and it really. I'm not sure if he would have stolen the Baron. I think the fight would have worked out a little bit better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know how conclusive that would be, because there are times where you can steal a Baron, but dying in the process is actually worse for you than stealing the Baron for your team.
Well,
Yeah, as we can see here, Nocturne was mainly the front line for for Blue Team, and without their front line, they really suffered as Ken was, even with the box preventing it, Ken was able to get the ult down onto 3 people, and that left Vayne as the only one who was alive after that fight.
well, guys, I guess that is it for game analysis night. It is now 6 o'clock. We've been at this for about 2 hours. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and just listening to our little new style that we kind of tried out today.
Quick question: what do you guys think about this sort of style where we get a bunch of people in to just discuss items, discuss meta, and discuss stuff like that?
Also,
It
if you
was-
did like it, or if you have any suggestions, these are those two. Tell us what you want us to talk about. What kind of things you're interested in hearing about.
Yeah. I
Yeah, like you
We-
said, I think it's really nice to get a bunch of differing opinions on stuff.
obviously, Sephiroth making the good point that obviously they hated it so much they're sitting here watching it. So, I mean, but then again, there are plenty of shows that thrive off that, like a Jersey Shore and Jerry Springer, stuff
Howard
like
Stern, man, people just
Howard
Jersey
Stern.
they
Shore.
listen to see what he does.
Every time Jersey Shore is spoken of, I feel like brain cells die.
You just die on the inside.
Just
I
dying
just
on
I
the
die a little. I die a little bit on the inside. I'm just.
yeah,
You
and
literally are sitting, just watching people be stupid.
unfortunately,
Good Fox there being late.
200,000 frames in, we dropped one, guys. Oops,
Oh,
we dropped the
man.
ball.
Saki.
Oh,
Like
Gotta
a
shape
shame.
up. You can't drop any frames. What are
We
you doing?
dropped the ball. I don't know what happened.
you dropped it.
All right, Chad. Do you know where that one frame was? Could
Where'd
you-
the one frame go?
Could you tell us
One
where the
frame.
one frame dropped?
Someone's gonna go back and watch the whole archive and be like, it was at 1 hour and then 32 minutes and 50 seconds or something.
Yeah, they just click along frame by frame, just
About
looking at
130.
each individual frame of the video and figure
Hold
out.
on, it skipped a pixel over there. That's it. That's the frame.
He's like, photo evidence, picture proof. Fox came in and stole a frame. Well, Fox always making it difficult for everybody to do their jobs. And I'm going to end up dropping the stream and Skype call before he comes in and does his little annoying intro. But thank you everyone for... oh, burn. No, I'm just kidding. So
Fight,
thank...
fight.
Fight? What is it? What are we, 12?
Yeah,
But
even lift.
we can't all be children, Azaraki. But literally, thank you all for watching. Hopefully you liked our new style. And just
Literally.
again, I am literally, I do that all the time. Get used to it. And thank you for dropping Foxy in the call, which I am Saki
No
Dance.
idea.
I am Azaraki Dragon. Roar.
I'm Fancy Zergling.
I'm David Lasher.
Oops.
Yeah, there it is. I was waiting for that.
Damn it.
At some point.
Should have just kept it in the same order. I didn't want to be the last one to go this time, so I figured somebody else was gonna wrap up.
All right, and the
bad.
stream is now going.